I almost got off the hook.
Almost.
I thought
You said 10 minutes.
They have so much good data to share. I thought, I'm not really going to have to talk at all, am I? But they did. They saved me 10 minutes after all. So we recognize that with so much good work going on in MDE and so much good work going on in human services, and we don't have any of our early childhood representatives here with us on this panel today, but there's work going on in early childhood in Minnesota, and we realize that there's a lot of richness potentially there in collaboration, and so we formed a network. We pitched, and I think there's a slide on this, we pitched together with some colleagues at St. Thomas University and our Minnesota Association for Behavior Analysis and our local adult residential provider trade group and some other providers. In 2016, we pitched, let's make a network here in Minnesota of all of us who are doing PBS work and find the common ground and the common language that we share and learn from one another. And so we did that, and we pitched right away for an award from APBS to hold an event to get everyone together from across our settings, across our disciplines to talk. And we held an event. I'll show you some pictures in just a minute, and we did a path process to figure out how do we go forward in a meaningful way. So we held our inaugural statewide event in 2017. We launched social media, which our whole team is here, and if you go on MNPBS Facebook or Twitter, you'll see a whole lot of posts probably from this presentation. And then we created an organizational structure driven by our path process, which you'll see here in a minute. And we formalized an interface with the team that Amber leads through DHS, that Olmsted-driven process. We figured out what our relationship is as a network to her process. But then in 2018 here in May, we're going to have our second annual statewide event, which we're really excited about. So here's our leadership team, a few folks familiar to you here today, and here's what our path ended up looking like. I'm going to buzz through some of this just for the sake of time, but here's how we ended up structuring ourselves. So we have a core leadership team that includes people from across our disciplines, across settings, and people who work across the lifespan. And we broke ourselves into three core working areas: marketing and social media, event planning, and exemplary PBS communities. And so we started to see connections emerging. So with so much positive behavior interventions and supports going on in schools across the state, and the organization-wide training ramping up and hitting more and more parts of the state, and our early childhood work, pyramid model and otherwise, there's connections there. And we thought, how do we start to conceptualize the formation of these connections in such a way that we can demonstrate a community that looks good within tiers and across tiers, within age ranges and across age ranges, handing off across time points in the lifespan, provider to provider, provider to school, things like that. So that's what I'm going to spend most of my remaining minute talking about today. But here's just some, because they show data, I wanted to show data, but they helped put the slide together. So we have, at the bottom of the screen there, we have, or bottom in the left side, an increasing number of followers on our Twitter and our Facebook accounts, and we're going to get a YouTube channel up and going. This is Garrett's baby. It's going to be great. So when you search Minnesota PBS Network, you can see some cool posts that we try to stay active with. Page views. Rachel maintains a site on MNPSP.org, which is a great site for positive supports generally, and we have some PBS information up there specifically, and we have a lot of hits on that. And we have a lot of our partners who have participated in event planning, and in 2017 we had Barry McCurdy as our keynote, and we had some in-state rock stars who led our strands in early childhood, K through 21 education, and our adult community strand as well. And so here's what we're doing. This is a little bit of a summary of the data that you've seen so far, but there are 64 pyramid model trained sites in Minnesota statewide, 645 schools, 31% of the schools in Minnesota, is that accurate? Cohort trained to implement school-wide PBIS, and 22 organization-wide teams in 4 regions. And there are PBS facilitators emerging around the state, strong presence, small numbers. And an interesting fact about Minnesota, in our first statewide event last year, we had 174 people on site, roughly 100 attended by telepresence, and roughly 2/3 of them were adult community type people, which is not the ratio that you see at APBS. And so we have a lot of That doesn't necessarily reflect.
Well, they have their own conference too.
Right.
So they've got a summer institute, and then we have this other. So we have actually 2 things now for PBS, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of interest across our sectors. And so just to really quickly go through this and give credit to George Sugai and having us think about logic models with what we're bringing to this and what we expect to produce in a measurable way, and what would change about life if we produce what we aim to produce. We had all of our working groups think through this, and we put our own spin on it, where we had a vision component that we thought through what's going to change in a big picture sense in the world, and then we aligned ourselves into those working kind of buckets. And so I wanted to just walk you through really quickly what our exemplary communities logic model section looks like. So our vision, if we get this right, if we can cultivate exemplary communities across Minnesota, and we have a target of 3 over the next couple of years, that we would have sort of an understanding, or a common vision, I guess is the way to say it, of a continuum, something to shoot for, something that might not ever be realized, but with the connections within tiers and across tiers, activities within tiers and across tiers, those handoffs from different points in the lifespan, we could lay out what, if we could wave a magic wand, how a perfect PBS continuum of practice across the lifespan would look like. And different communities across our state could start to identify, we're doing this and we're doing that, and here's some connections that we're starting to make. We have a lot of inputs going into this already. Like I've said, and like they've talked about, we have education, human services, and early childhood putting in a lot. We have people who are very interested. We have connections and collaborations already. A lot of implementation already across the state, and measurably, we would hope to be able to see collaborations emerge. We would hope to see transitions across the lifespan emerge, development of practical tools and resources that are shared among us, and mentorship of young people, presentations by us and others, showcasing what we're doing, and people becoming more aware. Generally is an outcome. So what might change in Minnesota, generally speaking, is an awareness by families, by practitioners, administrators, decision makers, that PBS is out there, it works, it's tangible, it has a presence, it has not only within but across tiers and agencies, and what else to highlight? And that culturally we're growing PBS across the state in the many ways that we can. And here's just a shell of how our thinking is emerging in our exemplary communities work group. It's not filled in. It's taken us some time to get to this place where we're imagining within the column headers of early childhood, education, and then adult services. Then the tiers are the row headers. What kinds of systems and supports, strategies and skills, implementation and outcome measures for decision making, and then transition considerations can you think about within each of those cells? And then imagine arrows popping up across tiers in each column, and then across the columns for handoffs. What are people doing to facilitate that? So that's what we're beginning to think about as an exemplary communities work group. And so we're starting to spread the word about our Collaborators Forum is the new name for it. Or we don't call it a conference, we call it a Collaborators Forum. We use kind of a gathering method where we're telling stories from practitioners to practitioners. It's not a data-heavy, expert-driven conference. And so that's coming up in May. We have Dr. Ashley McSuga-Gage, who many of you know is going to come up and be our keynote. And then, get ready, 2021, Minneapolis hosts APBS. And it might not be this warm, but it might be. We've had 80 degrees in March, but we have a lot of great stuff in downtown Minneapolis that you'll get to enjoy.
And that's from the Super Bowl.
Yeah, did folks see this image come up in the Super Bowl during the halftime show? It was really cool. We'll make sure to give you directions to Prince's home and now museum in Chanhassen, west of the city, if you want to travel out and see that.
Baseball.
Yes.
We've got some plans for that too.
That's right. So did we meet our takeaways? So we have a couple minutes for questions and we'll stick around, but I suppose we should let people either go if you have a poster to put up, but we'll be around for questions.
Yeah, and definitely come by the poster session. We have the MNPSP.org website. We've got some really, I think, fun resources to share if you're looking at ways to look at universal, person-centered, and PBS practices. And Julie will be there to help us, and I brought the posters. I don't know where they are.
Right behind us.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. We have swag. Come get some swag.
We do. Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for